$10.5 trillion. Does that seem like an astronomical sum to you? That's because it is. That's the amount of damage cyber attacks are estimated to do to businesses every year until 2025. That's a threefold increase over 2015. And with AI, ML, and so many other threats on the horizon, this is not going away anytime soon. So how then do you balance risk and reward? To better understand cybersecurity and everything that it entails, we have with us today a young leader from an industry. We have with us Pradeep Sekar, who's the Managing Director of Optiv Security India, on this episode of C-Suite Conversations. Optiv is a cyber advisory firm that believes for any organization to achieve its full potential, cyber risk must be understood and overcome. Optiv's real-world experience, deep vertical expertise, and diverse teams enable them to face any challenge with confidence. With an unmatched ecosystem of people, products, partners, and programs to design and implement agile solutions, Optiv's adaptive approach continually assesses risk in the context of cyber and broader objectives to secure today's business and fortify it for the future. Marksman Daily presents C-Suite Conversations. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of C-Suite Conversations. I have here with me Pradeep Sekar, the Managing Director of Optiv Security India. Sir, thank you so much for being here with us on this episode.
Thanks, Karan. Thanks for having me.
Pradeep, even though you are quite a young leader in the industry, I'm sure you've managed and interacted with hundreds, thousands of people over the course of your career. If I were to ask them to describe Pradeep Sekar in a nutshell, how would they do so?
I've been playing a leadership role in two different companies right now, right? And at Optiv, it's more of a more prominent role in terms of helping establish, set this team up and run this team along as well, right? So if you did ask people I work with in terms of how they would describe me, I would say probably somebody who is a hard taskmaster.
Okay.
But hopefully that's not the first thing that comes.
Okay.
But I would say somebody who is, let's say, having a bold vision, right? Like how you would want to push the boundaries to look at what is the art of the possible, right? Somebody who would want to look around the edges and see what's coming next and trying to set or veer the team towards something really bold and something differentiated. So Optiv Security, we are a cyber advisory services and solutions leader. But if you look at the space that we are in, cyber, there's a lot of players out there, right? And you could look at the volume of business that others are doing. You could look at the number of people that they have. And in turn, you could ask, what is Optiv doing that's different? And one of the things that I've talked about is we would want to be a team that punches above our weight, right? While we may not have the volume, we are able to provide the strategic advice and services to clients when it matters the most, when they need it the most, right? So yeah, so I would probably say that my teams might talk about how I push towards that, continuously churning towards what is it that we could, how we could be different, how we could provide services that are different from the rest of our competition, right? I would say probably those are kind of the things that
would probably pop up.
Talk about in terms of they already describe me. Yeah.
So is that something you've naturally gravitated towards? Is it innate, or were there some formative experiences that perhaps pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, I would say definitely a lot of formative experiences, right? So it's not something like reading a book and saying, hey, this is good, let me try this out. This has come more or less like from experience, right? I've seen and learned from the best is what I would probably say. So the places where I've worked before, the experience that was provided to me in those places, they probably nudged me in those directions, right? So I would say when it comes to ownership, right? For that particular trait, early on in my career when I was a senior consultant in the cybersecurity space, I was basically sent from India to the US to be the face of the company for a major Fortune 100 US retail client of ours that had just gone through the biggest breach, right? At that particular point in time, you could even call it the breach of the century. And I was asked to go in and be the subject matter expert of something that I wouldn't call myself a subject matter expert yet, but at that particular point in time, I was just learning the tricks of the trade, right? Learning the ropes, if you would. So that really, I would say, grounded me in terms of what are the things I would need to learn and take ownership of and be accountable for at this particular client organization in order to really build that trust and also be who I need to be. So that really taught me in terms of how owning what you've been given really helps build trust, right? So that's one of my major learnings from that particular experience, right? The other one is also, I'll probably talk about mentorship, right? I believe that is hugely influential in any leader's journey. So I had a great leader growing up, somebody I could look up to, somebody who is pretty much inculcated in me like a down-to-earth, I would say, personality. Have a never say never attitude of sorts, if you would, have like a positive work environment. So I kind of learned that, and he kind of instilled in me like customers and clients keep us honest, right? At the end of the day, you might think that, hey, I'm going to change something, I'm changing an approach. Just because I have a different approach that others are not doing does not mean that's going to go, let's say, go sell $1 million or $1 billion out there. At the end of the day, clients should buy that, right? And that's where clients ground us. And that mentorship that I received from that leader was, I would say, hugely beneficial in seeing why and what we do, how does it impact our clients, right, in the day-to-day lives. So that's something I've taken to my heart. And every single time I work with my teams, I've tried to take time to mentor the next set of, I would say, leaders that's coming up in our organization so that they're ready to face challenges as they come in the future.
So you spoke a little bit about innovativeness at a personal level, at an organizational level, because of course, like you said, you work at Optiv, cyber advisory on risk. There's been this huge pivot, of course, that we've seen in recent years, perhaps decades worth of change crammed into a few years. But often when you pursue innovation as companies have, there is a risk of upping the ante when it comes to cyber risk. How do you balance that mandate, pursuing innovation and progress, but mitigating those risks?
Okay, that's a great question, right? So I'll probably answer that with an analogy, right? And whenever I go for recruitment, right? When I go to business schools or tech schools where we go to recruit, I kind of use this analogy to help them understand risk. So typically when we think about a brake in a car, when I ask people, like, what is the purpose of having a brake in a car? People usually say it is to slow things down, slow the car down, or to make it come to a stop, right? But when we look at it very closely, a brake, basically, the true purpose of a brake, I feel, is it gives the driver the confidence to actually go faster.
Control to a degree.
Exactly, right? So if you look at Formula One drivers, right, if they would not go the speeds that they go today, if they're not comfortable with the brakes that they had, right? If they're not confident that the brakes would hold them in the racing line, right? They would not even go at those speeds. So basically, that's where I believe the innovation versus cyber risk, it's not an either or, nor it's a balancing act, right? I strongly believe that you need to have good cyber hygiene, because if a company does have good cyber hygiene, that basically gives the company the confidence to go and start trying out different emerging technologies, go out and do a lot of digital transformation plays that they need to, because a company that is able to identify and manage cybersecurity risks would be able to provide a safe and secure environment for the team members to go trial out multiple different things, knowing that, hey, you know what, if something goes wrong, we still have it contained, right, in this environment. So cyber, that's where I believe having good cybersecurity controls in place definitely makes an organization more risk-taking.
All right, super. So then from your vantage point, seeing all of these major pieces in play, what are the most pressing cybersecurity risks that you think organizations must pay heed to in today's day and time?
Globally, I would say cybersecurity challenges are impacting multiple different areas, right? And some of those areas directly impact business operations in a very, very direct manner. Now, just looking at the past few years, I would say some of those that are like front and center right now, one is supply chain security, right? So this basically came to the fore, I would say, end of 2020, when there was a SolarWinds supply chain attack. And this was the time when the whole world woke up to something called as a software supply chain attack. Because until then, everything related to supply chain was hardware and physical, right? Yeah. Something gets stolen off the supply chain, or something gets, let's say, tampered with during a supply chain. Now, that's what typically people were focusing on. But this basically got people to think about what are all the software components I'm using, and what is making up the software, right? What is making it work? Do I have even control over it? And SolarWinds was one particular case wherein that was being used by thousands of organizations, not just in the US and Europe, but it included private sector companies, it included government agencies. Now, all of these folks were basically downloading software from the SolarWinds website, thinking that it was basically an update software, right? A routine update, if you would, right? Like how you do on, let's say, your app updates. But little did they know that that was basically malicious software that they're downloading. And that's the software that you use to control your internal organization networks. So the cyber attackers, cyber criminals had basically had remote access, backdoor access to all of these thousands of organizations. That was a huge wake-up call. Now, ever since 2020, we have seen a multitude of supply chain attacks, especially in the software space. But I think that is something that in today's day and age, organizations need to be pretty much aware of and prepared for, right? That's one. The second one I would say is ransomware. That's again something that is troubling businesses all across the globe, irrespective of whether it is a small company, whether it's a medium-sized or large-sized organization. Ransomware gangs today have become global brands. So some of the most common ones, if you look at this Clob, there's Lockbit, there's Blockbuster, all these different gangs, they, to the extent that if you just look at the last 4 years, right, the amount of ransom that they've been able to get is $1.1 billion, right, from organization. Just 4 years alone, right? That's how much money they're making, to the extent that they have their own support system of sorts. Right? They're basically operating like an organization. So in the underground chat forums, they have chat forums for supporting other cyber criminals. They have HR departments for their own organizations. So that's pretty much how organized they are.
The mafia takes care of its own.
Exactly, right? So the organized crime that's above, now it's gone completely online, right? Ransomware continues to, I would say, trouble businesses all around the world. The other one, which is more of a, I would say, more of a nation-state play, I would say is nation-state activism and wipers, right? What I mean by that is today, nation-states have started to look at the possibility of using cyber as one other option in their warfare tactics, right? So if you look at what happened with Russia and Ukraine, now during this onset of the war, Russia basically released like 7 different versions of Viper malware, which basically goes and wipes everything in your systems, right? They have started using this as a huge tactic. Now there's other nation states as well, right? We have China, there's North Korea, Iran. So all these are building their capacity to attack other countries or things that they are not okay with, right? So that's again a major issue. If you're let's say if you're a business that's multinational in nature in different countries, then you also need to be prepared for those. I would say these are some of the challenges that is plaguing the global businesses today, but something that they need to be mindful of, right? And that's where I would say organizations such as ours comes in terms of having a mandate of making the world a safer place, building trust in the global environment. I would say more about the computing environment, if you would, because companies like Optiv, our goal is to help organizations to ensure they can secure their networks, they can be better prepared when there's a potential ransomware impacting them, they can be better prepared if they're starting to use AI and they need to look at AI-related risks, how they can manage AI-related risks. So these are services, some of the services I would say that we are also offering and companies like ours are offering, right? So, and our mission, I would say, is more about making the world a safer place so that companies can truly realize their full potential.
So, Pradeep, just one last question before I let you go. You say that you often go out and you meet young candidates, trying candidates to hire for the company. If you were to be offering them a piece of advice, at the start of their careers that they can embrace, that they can take on and apply to their own journeys, what would that be?
So I would say this is a vast field, right? So people I meet with, I usually tell them, understand the field, right? Because as long as there's going to be computing, cybersecurity is going to be there, right? So we've seen cybersecurity just growing from strength to strength with the advent of every single technology that's come up, right? Ever since cloud to, I would say, the blockchain, to the metaverse and now AI, every single new technology that's come in has basically pushed the demand for cyber ever more higher. To the extent that I would say we have more than 3 million unfilled jobs worldwide from a cybersecurity standpoint. So all you need to do is, I usually call it the curiosity quotient and the passion quotient. Yeah, just be curious because this is a world that is changing by the minute, right? Just be curious and be open to learning new things and be passionate about it, right? If those two things you have it, then yeah, anyone can make a name for themselves in the field of cybersecurity.
I couldn't agree more with you, Pradeep. Thank you so much for being here with us on this episode of C-Suite Conversations. Lovely having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
The rise of cyber attacks across the world might seem like a bit of a gloom and doom scenario, but the increased convergence of the global digital community represents a compelling opportunity to flip the script. And if my conversation with Pradeep Sekar was any indication, that change is well and truly underway. Thank you for watching this episode of C-Suite Conversations. We hope to see you in the next one as well.